one click this one, and you can get an idea of it. So going for any kinds of the crop production, we have to learn that what is the soil in the water relationship. So first we'll see that soil as a system. What is the soil? Everybody has learned in this, soil is a product of the physical, chemical, and biological weathering of rocks under the influence of climate, vegetation, and topography. Now it's very important that there are three factors are responsible for the soil development. There is a physical, when the rocks are weathered and it converts into a sand and then into the, you can say the soil, and then so you can say the clay minerals over there. So it's a physical weathering is there. The chemical weathering due to the rainwater, then acidification, the rocks are getting weathered, they are broken down into pieces and then into a small friable soil, and it takes into a, you can say the large you can say years, so many years to convert that into a good friable or maybe the quality of the soil. Then third is the biological weathering. You know that the any fungi or bacteria is the start of this earth. So you can say that it's a generator of this earth. So that's why they have to be there. So in the soil, when the soil has the living things, that's why we call it as a soil. Soil is a living thing, and they are having the biological also, which can go into the different, you can say, leave into the rocks and they crush and then it digest, it can go through its guts and everything. So biological weathering is also one of the thing. And all these three, physical, chemical, and biological weathering, has the impact or influence of the climate. Just like in rainy season, winter season, and the summer season, the heat, the cold, and the heavy water can cause that. The vegetation, which type of the crops or which type of the biodiversity is there, they are largely depend on that one, because the soils in the dryland areas are different than the soils in the higher rainfall areas. Why? We can see further over there. But these are having the different qualities, different characteristics, and different kinds of strategies over there. So that based on that soil characteristics, we are going for the crop growth. So soil is the three-phase system, because soil doesn't include the one over it's a solid matter, but it's a solid phase which contains the minerals and the organic matter. Largely because of the biological weathering, organic matter is one of the important factors of the solid phase. So soil has three phases. One is a solid phase, that is minerals and organic matter. Then liquid phase, that is the water is there, and the gaseous phase, that is soil air, which is called as a less O2 than higher water O2 vapors with this. So basically, these are the three phases over there. That's what we can see, that this is the major component of the soil. So air and water together can bring about to 50%, whereas the 50% is contributed through the 45% is through the your minerals and organic matter, and 5% through the organic matter. So these all the major components of the soil. So soil serves as a medium for the plant growth, because that is as it supplies the nutrients or the required, you can say the food for the plant. So it's a acts as a plant growth medium. Then plant needs the water for transpiration, so metabolic purposes and nutrients for growth. So plant, whatever the water is needed for the transpiration or maybe the metabolical activities there, because every plant has to take the water from the soil or maybe from the nature through humidity also. So that water is being utilized by the plants for getting converted that into, or maybe translocating the various types of the photosynthesis and to produce something and to transpire something. As we are also, as human beings, we are doing the respiration from our body itself. So we have the large the hairs on our body, which is acts as the source of the, which can reduces the our rate of transpiration. Such like the same modifications are there on the plants itself. So these are the plant needs the water for transpiration. So root extracts the water and nutrients from the soil. So what is where from where the water and nutrients comes from? The soil, and it has been extracted through the plant roots. So anchorage for plants and acts as a storehouse of the nutrient. So soil is anchorage, because plants has to stand somewhere and they are putting their roots or advancing or maybe growing of their roots into the soil, so that the plants will get anchorage. They can stand easily and can translocate all the nutrients, can uptake or can be nutrients also been uptaken by the plants from the roots to the needed part of the plant, maybe in the leaves, stem, or maybe in the fruit product. So this is acts as a reservoir. So if you look at the various kinds of soil profile, it shows that there are various layers you can to the soil. If you go through the any kind of the near, now there are a lot of roads are constructed in our Maharashtra also, in so many parts of the area. So alongside when they were cut the hills over there, or maybe some hillocks are there. So you find that there's a slight, you can say, structure of different layers over there. That is called as the soil profile. The soil profile shows the layers known as the horizons that's present in the soil. Different horizons. The first part you can say in the top here, it is an organic matter which has been supported by some green, you can see the grasses over there, maybe plant roots and everything. So it's saying the green matter and the dark color. And if it has been different layers over there, it shows that there is a difference between the two layers. So how this weathering process has been occurred, how these layers has been formed, so you can get that over the period of maybe 10 years, 15 years, 50 years, 100 years or 200 years, how this weathering of the rocks has been occurred, and you can get the different types of soil profile. So horizon forms over the centuries due to mostly from weathering, and the later system is used to name the different horizons. Maybe you can say the A, C1, C2, because there are different levels over there, and based on that criteria, these are called, this soil profile has been studied. So soil, then we have already seen that which are the different, you can say the properties of the soil, physical properties, which are influencing the soil water relationship, because it is the what the texture or maybe the structure of the soil decides the different kinds of the quality of that particular soil. So based on that cultural classes or textural classes, structural classes, or the combination of both, you can decide the which type of the soil you are having at your in your plot. So soil texture, it is a relative proportion of the soil particles. That is a soil having the different particles called as the sand, silt, and clay particles. These are totally been aggregated and they are being arranged in such a way, maybe having that is different number of kinds of proportion is there. So based on that one, you can have the different sand, silt, and clay. The soil structure is that arrangement of that particle, how that particles has been arranged. You know, there are a lot of, you can say that, for example, you can have the chapatis in your, you can say the box, you have piled it one of one each other, like, okay, so it is piled in such a you can say the uniform situation. You can have the different layers over there. But if you look at to the very sticks, maybe any sticks which you required in the field, you are not putting it as one of one. It is standing in some of the, you can say the pot. So they are arranged in different way, right? So eggs are arranged in different ways. They are above each other. But likewise, the soil structure has been also been arranged. So soil texture is that soil texture refers the relative proportion of the sand, silt, and clay in the soil. And there are 12 textural classes are there which can decide which type of the soil you have. So loam is considered to be the ideal texture for plant growth because loam is having the both. It's not the clay, because heavy clay can obstruct the soil for, if they been having been soaked the water, it will get flocculated or it can get, let's say the dispersed little bit and gets like a sponge, like it can increase their size. But at the time of shrinkage, when there is a lot of water is being moving or drying off, the soils will be get cracked off, heavy cracks will be there. But in case of the loam, because of their different arrangements of the particles and the soil, loam contain more, that soil is having the good quality as the holding of water as well as the roots and the nutrients, both the things. So that's why the loam is considered to be the ideal texture for plant growth. And difficult to alter the soil texture on large scale, because if you want that, if you go to the Konkan region, there are all, you can say the lateritic soils are there. But if you come into the Ghat zone or Western Maharashtra, you can say that these are the montmorillonite type of the soils are there. So these are clay content over there. These are having also the sand content is more, or maybe the loam content is more in case of the Konkan soil. So basically, based on that color or maybe the climate, the color of the soil is changing, the structure of the soil is changing, and the texture also depends based on that one. So that's why difficult to alter the soil texture. It depends on the local condition, nature, and the climate over there. Then importance of soil texture is that which is influences the pore size and the pore spaces, because different particles are come together in such a way so that they can find or they can prepare some pores, like you can say any straw like structures are there. These are called as the pore size and pore spaces are there. So large pores are there when they are having the large pores will be use it for the air, you can say the filling of the air, whereas the small pores is for the water because they have to hold the water for maximum time. That's why small pores are important. So in case of the clay soil, it can holds more water, but at the same time, it reduces maximum. You can say that it's not available to the main crop as the water is been going into the smaller end particles, which is in the high gravitational, consider force is required for the uplifting of that water. So that's why the small pores in the water and large pores for the air they are generally used. Then influence soil water holding capacity. Fine texture soils have the more and the smaller pores. That's why they are hold water more tightly than the lateritic soil, which are having the less, you can see the large pores are there. So air is more, the water is less. So clay content of soil, small pores, has the fine texture soils having the high water holding capacity. In case of the texture also, as per the United States Department of Agriculture classification, sand silt clay, you know that one, that is triangle is there. You have defined some triangle, and based on that one, we can do the classification of our soil, which can affect the movement and storage of soil. This is what the standard classification triangle over there, which has largely been depending on, because if you have the more content of the clay is there, naturally you can have the clay loam, or maybe silty clay loam is there. So loam is at the center, which means the all proportion is in the good sand, silt, and clay percentage over there. But as you move upwards, there is more than 60 or 50% clay is there. It generally having the some soils are, which not be suitable for largely for irrigation. So you have to go for organic matter application. But in case of the down part, because the sand and silt is there. But in case of the sand, it is also been not holding the water properly. So that's why we have to go for some or adding the organic matter to reduce the pore size. So these are all kind of which can be treated as a management part. So soil texture classes, we can say that the percentage content of the sand, silt, and clay determines the texture class of the soil. So silt clay imparts a fine texture and slow water and air movement, also high water holding capacity in case of silt clay. But sandy to gravelly refers to lighter soils, and they have the lower water holding capacity, which should already been we have discussed that one. So sandy clay soils are normally very well drained and often lack of nutrients due to constant leaching losses. In case of the sandy soil, these soils are not been preferred for maximum for the crop growth. So we have to need for go for irrigation as well as for nutrient application constantly in case of the sandy soil. That's why the soils of the Rajasthans, you can say they are not being so suitable for that. Those soils which are having the high nutrient silty conditions, or maybe clay condition or clay texture is there, which can be used. So mostly the clay soils are the opposite end of the soil spectrum. They tend to allow water to move through the more slowly and will stay wetter longer. They will hold the nutrients. But loam soil, which is in the sand, silt, and clay amounts are equal. That is maybe 35, 33, 33, 33 proportions may be there, or maybe likewise silt proportion is more. So naturally the micropores are more, so provide the good drainage and aeration also, both the things equally, and more available water and nutrients, which can affect the most favorable conditions for the plant growth. So soil structure, we can say the arrangement of the soil particles into group of aggregates. These particles in sandy soils may remain independent of each other. There is a single grain structure, or the particles in fine texture soils are arranged in a definite manner to form a stable aggregates. Which are definite particles are there? So we can see that the importance of this soil structure, why it has been important, because it improves the air and water relationship, because we are discussing the soil water relationship, and that's why the air and water relationship is improved by the soil structure. So texture we cannot change, the soil structure changes. They improves the root penetration, how fast or better the roots can be get penetrated, which is for example, in case of clay soil, it's been hard to go for the deeper layer of the roots, so into the deeper layer. But in case of light soil, it goes more deeper, but they don't have the water and nutrients. So basically, that's why the loam structure is been very considered prominent or effective for controlling the all the soil water relationship. So it improves the infiltration soil structure, then it reduces the erosion, ease of tillage, because if you have the clay structure is more, it requires more treasury, more power to cut that soil part when it is being get dried. In case of the light soil, it is very difficult to, it doesn't require much, you can say pressure, but it doesn't have the large, you can say the top of the soil layer, so that which can supports you for your nutrients. So yields are less over there, where in case of the high clay soils, heavy clay soils, the yields are, or the root penetration is too difficult, or maybe the tillage operations is difficult. That's why roots are not going down, they are not absorbing the nutrients or maybe uptaking anything, and that's why the crop is in the maybe in some stress conditions. So it can reduces the crusting also, soil texture if you can manage it. So which are the different types of soil texture? The platy structure is there arranged in the horizontal planes. You can see that platy in the above parts, just like one, you can see the dish over the other dish. So if you can pour anything from the top soil, that doesn't go penetrate down. So this is called as a low infiltration capacity of that soil. So this is not, we cannot suggest that there should be platy structure, but the clay content of soil having such type of the platy structure. Then prismatic, which is in the columnized structure there. There is a piles one in vertical way, not in the horizontal way. So this is, we can say, called as the subtypes or columnar having the vertical oriented found in the horizons of the clay soils, which can drain a little bit more than that one. But in case of blocky structure, there is a cubes are there. These are angular and occurs mostly in the upper parts of the B horizon because it is nearer to the organic matter. So it is a cube-like structure where you can have the little bit of friability over there. But in case the spheroidal, that is a granular and crumb-like structure is there. So subtypes are granular and crumb, round in shape, high in organic matter and found in A horizon, that is the upper part. So this type of the structure or this type of the soil is been very considered preferred for any type of the growth of crop and can get the better yields. So that's why this has been preferred. So how we can having the relationship, there's a volume and mass relationship of different soil components. First, we decide the bulk density because the soil bulk density, which we are having that in case of the mass upon volume. So how much mass of that particular area with that particular volume. So based on that one, we are calculating the gram per centimeter cube is the unit over there. So typically we have the 1.1 to 1.6 gram per cubic meter if it has been normally soils. But if you add the organic matter, the bulk density has been reduced. So naturally, because the mass has been reduced and it is overloaded with the organic matter. So we are interested to go for that one to reduce the bulk density. Then particle density is there, the soil particles, that is density, how much particles are there per unit of the area. So based on that one, it is decided on the 2.6 to 2.7 grams per centimeter cube. So it is depends on the all sandy. If the sandy soils are there, particle density is more. If there is you can say the clay type of structure is there, particle density you can say the less. So based on that one, the bulk density and particle density is used because both are required for calculating the porosity is important because volume of the pores upon the volume of the soil is there. So pores are decided by the different particle densities and the bulk densities are there. So based this one is a 30 to 60% if the porosity is there. Naturally, all the crop can be grown very easily. So that's why the organic matter content into the soil, even it has been at the little bit higher side of the clay or higher side of the, you can say the sand also a little bit, you can manage that soils with the proper use of the organic matter, green manure, or anything is there, so that you can reduce the pore size and increase the pore size in clay, and you get the porosity. And that porosity is very important because these pores are being filled with the air as well as the water. Both the things are there. So kinds of different soil waters are there, which are different kinds of the water which are storing the water or holding the water into the you can say the soil. So first in one is the gravitational water. What is the micropores that moves downwards freely under the influence of gravity beyond the root zone, because that is the water which is not available to the crop roots. So it is again we require so much, you can say the more pressure to go for that. If that is under the stress condition, even the roots goes much deeper and can try to extract that the water has been held by that particular soil pore or soil particle at, you can see, the inner part of that layer. So that's why it has been very difficult or maybe very hard to get that of soil. So it needs that a lot of pressure is required for that one. That is okay. That is a passive absorption for that one. So not available to the plants, this gravitational water, but capillary water, that is water retained by the soil in capillaries or pores, we can say the micropores, small pores, against the gravity, because it is not going down into the gravity by the gravitational force, but it's been held by against the gravity by forces of surface tension as continuous film around the soil particle. So this is the water which is available into the micropores. It is the available water to the plant. So this water we have to manage it, and for that purpose we have to manage the soil texture, we have to manage the soil structure, we have to use some other practices to get the maximum pores, you can say, into the soil, and they can hold the water, they can hold the air properly. Then the hygroscopic water, what is held tightly as thin film around the soil particles. So it is again been the not available to plant because that water is held by the soil, because the particle, it's very hard to get extracted that water. That is called as the hygroscopic water. So this is also not available to the plants. So basically amongst these three, the capillary water has been very important. You can see that in gravitational water, the soil particles are there and the water is moving down gradually, and which is going below the, you can say, root zone. So roots cannot get the water and that plants will not be getting survived. But in case of the micropores filled with water, you can say that as it is being close together, having the micropores, that water is available between the two pores. These micropores are available, and that's why this water is being utilized by the crop for better growth. This is available water. But in case of the capillary water or at the soil which is at the you can say the permanent wilting point, where even the plants cannot regain itself again, even though the water is available, plants cannot able to extract the water from that soil particle, the hygroscopic water, and can survive. So that's why it has been hard to get it. So first one is the saturated condition, over and above the water is going up. Then this is the water where which has been utilized between the pores, and this is what not available to the plants. So these soil water contents are there because soil moisture constants are different types, because how we can measure that which type of the soil having the which type of the water holding capacity. So first one is the maximum water holding capacity of that soil. We have to calculate by doing some experimentations, and for that purpose, holding water capacity, we need to understand what is the field capacity, moisture equivalent, and permanent wilting point. So almost everybody is knowing that WAPSA condition. WAPSA condition of the soil, when you can if the soil is having the water, but still when you are taking the soil in your hand, and if you make a ball of that one, that ball will be formed. But as soon as you can throw the ball on any wall surfaces, the ball has been considered broken down easily. So this is what you call as a WAPSA condition, where the moisture is there sufficiently, but it does not have the excess moisture, it does not have the less moisture over there. This condition is called, this is the simplest method to understand or to whether the soil is in the WAPSA condition or not. This is what. So for maximum water holding capacity, when all the soil pores, that is macro and micro, the air and the water pores are filled with water, the soil is said to be at its water holding capacity. There is a maximum water he has holded. So soil moisture tension is almost zero at the maximum water holding capacity. At case of the field capacity, the soil moisture is held by the soil against the gravitational force is called as the field capacity. That means it has not been drained, it has not been excess, but it is held by the soil only. It is the upper limit of the water availability to the plants and ranges from 0.1 to 0.3 bar. Because how to calculate the bar will tell you, because 1 bar is equal to 1073 centimeter column of the water. This much of the pressure, if there is in any column, bar is there, because the same bar has been used for the experimentation, and that converts that into the how much centimeter bar is required to create a one bar or one pressure on the plants. So it is a 1073 centimeter column. How much amount of the pressure it is creating, the same pressure is required to extract the water from the plant soil for the plants. Then in case of soil water contents are there, sorry, this is all. The moisture equivalent, the amount of the water retained by initially saturated soil after we subjected a centrifugal force of 1,000 times that gravity for about half an hour. The values of the field capacity and moisture equivalent are equal in medium texture soils, or high in sandy and less in clay soils. So moisture equivalent, because sandy soils doesn't have this much of the moisture over there, and clay soils have some moisture. So the equivalent moisture equivalent is less in clay and high in sandy condition. So whenever you are putting some experiment on that, how to calculate moisture equivalent, you put that conditions into the soil after being subjected to centrifugal force particular of that soil. So permanent wilting point is another point that is a constant here, soil moisture constant to study. It is the moisture content, because this is the end of the, you can say, the availability of moisture, that when the plants the soil has shown the permanent wilting point conditions, because plant is, you can say, the indicator for that which type of the soil moisture is available in your soil. So when the plants get dries up, and even after the application of water, it doesn't regain itself. So this is called as the permanent wilting point of the plant, because plant has loses its turgidity, or it cannot able to survive, the plant cells are being died off. So this is the moisture content of the soil at which the plants can no longer obtain enough moisture to meet the transpiration requirements and remain wilted unless water is added to the soil. Even if you are adding the water, it cannot regain itself. So soil moisture tension at permanent wilting point ranges from 7 to 32 atmosphere. That is commonly used average value is the 15 atmosphere. It goes much beyond that water availability. So this is the permanent wilting point. The kinds of the water available and available moisture content is this is what the pictorial graphical presentation, because you can see that the saturation part is there, then the field capacity is there, the permanent wilting point or wilting range and ultimate wilting point is there. So that as you go up, you can say the saturation, the water content will be different over there. So which is called as the gravitational or free water in the saturation and available moisture for sandy loam. This is called as a gravitational free water. whereas the capillary water is between the field capacity and wilting, permanent wilting point. The point is that these 2 points are having a much of the moisture availability to the plant. So that's why this is called as the capillary water. And the water which is not been available, that is after wilting, so that is called as the hygroscopic water. Soil moisture measurements are there. How we can measure this soil moisture? There's gravimetric method, field and appearance method, alcohol burning method, then hot air drying, gypsum sorption plugs, and infrared balances are there. Indirect methods are that one, electrical resistance blocks, because based on the resistance we can see that how much water moisture is available into the soil. The neutron scattering technique is that, there is neutron probe is being used. The gamma ray, time domain reflectoring, microwave remote sensing, all these are now, this micro remote sensing is coming in now because the picture, there is a near infrared or red thermometers are there, maybe the soil micro moisture remote sensings are there, sensors are there. Indirect method, gravimetric, major mass water content is a take field samples, then weigh it, overnight, because you are already, everybody is doing the gravimetric method to get the difference between the before the application and before putting into the oven and after coming out from the oven fry. You take the difference in the weight, and that whatever the difference is there, that much amount of the water it holds. So that is the gravimetric. Field and appearance method, it's a simple method, and you can say the age-old method over there. To get the soil, make it in a small, you can say the line, make a small thread-like structure, and then you can press that one. If it is breaks earlier, then it doesn't have the moisture. If it takes too long, it can tenacity. So naturally, it has a high water content over there. So basically, when you are putting any soil into your hand, and after crushing, if it is crumb-like structure, or maybe say the porosity is there, then you can get the better, you can say, result for your crop growth. So this is what we can say the field and appearance method is there. The neutron scattering, as I already mentioned, it's a neutron probe is used, and that probe is put it into the soil, and instead of going for oven and other things and everything, it is directly, because that neutron probe, the neutrons are going directly into the soil at a required depth, and they are, after illuminating their lights, if the moisture pores are there, moisture particles are there, they reflect back into the time domain refractometer, that is neutron scope. And based on that collection, how much moisture particles have been heated by that particular neutron probe, that quantity has been decided for calculation because of moisture indicators or how much water it has. The disadvantage is because neutron scattering is very, because the costlier method, then as it is the radioactive elements are there, so it is again the problem of licensing and safety. So it's not reliable for shallow measurements near the soil surface. So that's why we have went into the new technology that is called as the GPS, or maybe drone technology for calculating the moisture stress also there. Then the dielectric constants are there, because difference between the electrical poles, we are calculating the time domain reflectivity, frequency domain reflectivity, both the things are there, primarily used for research purpose at this time. So in indirect methods, tensiometer is there. It's a porous like cup is there at the bottom, and the whole complete pipe has been attached with some pressure gauge, and that pressure gauge is based on that whatever the amount of the moisture is been depleted from that particular probe, and after that one, how much amount is extracting from the soil. So that pressure that's operated on that particular area is called as a, you can say the tensiometers are there, which has been used for that purpose. So practical operating range time range is about 0.0 to 0.75 bar of tension. So that is not more you can say laborious, not having any tension, any difficulty in understanding how to take the measures of the tensiometer. The electrical resistance blocks are there. Generally, in case of moisture retaining, or maybe having the availability of moisture, they are putting some resistance blocks into the that's water reservoirs or maybe the soil, and to measure the soil water potential over there. Tend to work better at higher tension, that is a lower content. Then thermal dissipation blocks. Major soil water potentials are there, which is having the tensions over there and requires individual deliberations. This is what you can see the structure of neutron probe. You can see that the lower part is going into the soil. Below the probe, all the black color is the soil. So it goes down, it reflects the energy, and reflecting back the energy, you will get the this moisture content. So this is what the neutron tension is there. This is the tensiometer, which is in the large porous cup. You can say the ceramic cup is there, which are depleting the water slowly as based on the pressure required, and the whole the column is being filled with the water. So this is what the pressure was, and this is the timer is there, how much time is required to absorb that much quantity of water. So this is again the electrical resistance. We generally find it, or you might have seen it in case of the water detectors of government of Maharashtra, for where the borewell you have to dig up, you have to take the permission from the government to go for the digging of that particular borewell. The soil water potential is the energy state of the soil, because that potential creates the energy. And so soil water potential or soil water tension is a measure of the tenacity with which water is retained into the soil, and shows the force per unit area that must be exerted to remove water from the soil. So it is usually expressed in atmosphere. So 1 atmosphere is equal to 1036 centimeter of water. 1036 centimeter of water is that it should have the horizontal. It's not a vertical, it's a horizontal structure over there. And from that, you have to come to know that how much water it contains. So measure of the energy status of the soil water, then important because it reflects how hard plants must work on extract water. Then unit of measurements are normally bars or atmosphere. Soil water potential are negative pressure, and the water flows from three higher the potential to a lower potential water potential. So soil water potential can be because the components in the metric or capillary potential, gravitational potential, pressure potential, and osmotic potential. And the components of this potential are that basically you can say the left side of the equation is that one. Total soil water potential can be calculated with the gravitational potential, then metric potential, and then the osmotic potential. If they will come together, you can have a better computer operational potentials for that one. Then in case of the flow of water into the soil, as you know that anything which is fall on the soil surfaces, maybe through the rain or maybe through irrigation, that water has to be go into the soil as per our consider requirement or as per our need. Because in case of the sandy soils or maybe the loamy structural soils, little bit, you can lose the quantity of the water, because whenever the water is fall that the particular surfaces, it washes off the soil and it takes the water with them. So there is a great loss of nutrients as well as the soil. So flow of water into soil is that process of water entry into the soil through the soil profile and vertically downward is termed as a infiltration. So it is only that water has to be go into the soil and into that vertical downward is termed as a infiltration. So influencing the factors are there. Factors are influencing. These are first is soil texture. It's an arrangement of the particles. So it's not a physical the involvement of any of our parents. So soil texture is there. There is influencing. Then initial soil water content, of course, because in the earlier if they will get the proper sufficient water and later on doesn't get it, the plants will be having the problem. Or maybe you can say the to manage that one, it is very difficult. So initial soil water content is there. We have to calculate. Then surface sealing, structure, etc. Then soil cracking. Then tillage practices, method of application, there is basin furrow, check basins, or anything type of the, you can say the application of irrigation should be there, and water temperatures. You have to monitor these things, how the water is you can say used for this crop growth. Then typically infiltration curves, you can see that if it is a fine sand, it is earlier stages, it is goes faster and then it becomes little stable over there. After a lot of things are steady curve, the basic infiltration rate is there. So based on that one, you can see that from the left to the right, if you move ahead, that the infiltration rate is higher in the left side, has gone down to a, like I said, normal condition. So this is how much we are losing every year, the loss. So calculate the same thing and you can get the different infiltration curves over there. So terminology in relation to flow of water is that one. When the water is going into the soil, they are having the different steps are there. First is that the water is getting intake, that has been entry of the movement of water from the soil surface into the through the soil into the deeper layer. So that is called the water intake. Then percolation, it is downward movement of the water through saturated or nearly saturated soil in response to the gravity. So in percolation is there, but in case of the seepage, it is infiltration downward and lateral movement of the water into the soil from the source. Generally, whenever we are diverting any flow for our purposes, but if the natural water doesn't rises up, you cannot get the proper support for that. Then seepage is that it is the infiltration downward and lateral movement of the water into the soil from the source. When permeability, it is the property of a porous medium to transmit the fluids. That is from one, you can say the cell to another cell, maybe anything else is there. That is the transfer of this, you can say the fluids from one place to another, you can say the space is done by the permeability. Then what is the plant water? Because we have seen the soil relationship and soil water relationship, but in case of the plant water relationship has a very critical role. That is the role of water in the plant structure, water absorption, rooting characteristics, the moisture extraction of the crop, and soil water plant atmosphere content. That is called a SPAC. So role of water in the plant is the water is the source of oxygen and hydrogen element required for the synthesis of carbohydrates during the photosynthesis. This is the biggest, you can say, the contributing part of this water into the biological system. What is the structural constituents of the plant cell? Because if as and when the plant dies off, generally the cells are dries off, and when the cells are dried, it can rupture the things or loses some of the internal, you can say, the fluid is there, and that's why water is an essential structural constituents of the plant cell. So water serves as a solvent or several plant nutrients. Water can we use it to deliver the nutrients from one place to another, or maybe from the soil to the plant system. It acts as a carrier of food material also, because the translocator photosynthesis is prepared by the leaves and has to go to the stem or maybe root or maybe in a fruit. So for that purpose, the translocation, the water is very important. In case of, it acts as a buffer against a high and low temperature. It is also an essential part of the protoplasm, because protoplasm, if it is being dried out, naturally all the function of the cell has been died out. So this is very important to maintain the terminal pressure, or maybe the pressure inside the soil is very important. So it, as we have seen that as against the higher and lower temperatures, because as they role of water in the plant. Plant structure is there. First is the roots are the important factor for absorbing any type of the nutrient of the water. So absorption of water occurs mainly from roots. A young growing root, the tips that is having at the root cap, then the cell division zone is there, then vascular cylinder is there, xylem and phloem, all the characteristics are there at the bottom into the root soil. So these young growing roots tip the consists of the root cap, zone, mesoteric activity or region, rapid cell elongation, and region of quick cell differentiation and maturation. So this can be done by the roots also. The absorption of the water occurs through the younger part of the root and meristematic region. That's why the white roots, or maybe the white active newer roots, are very important in any plant. If it has been not been matured or not been taken care of, such type of the nutrients, ultimately the yields will going to be reduced. So this is, you can say, the important part for to understand as an agriculture is how the soil and water, and then soil and water and plant relationship is there. So young roots has the three distinct regions with the epidermis, cortex, and vascular bundles, whereas the epidermis consists of thin walled elongated cells, and these cells develops a root hair. Water and nutrients absorbed by the roots through elongated cell, that is epidermis. The cortex consists of outermost region called exoderm, and innermost region is called the endoderm. So parenchyma cells between these two layers are there, and they start working on the next thing. The phloem tissues consist of sieve tubes and companion cells, each and every phloem cells that serves to the root meristematic region. And xylem has the tracheids and vessels for conducting water and mineral solutes upward to the various parts of the plant. And that's why water is water, or the soil water atmospheric continuum is the flow path of water through SPAC is very complex, and that's why it is a series of resistance out. Because whenever you go for any irrigation also into the soil, then it doesn't mean that whatever the amount of the water you have decided at the one end over there, it reaches into the field at the other end completely. There are heavy losses, heavy resistance, heavy, you can say, the opposition for that when that water flowing. So this is helping in various locations at the loss of water, maybe the use of that water. So they are the soil resistance for the entry of the water into the roots. The soil xylem resistance for leading water into the xylem. stomatal resistance for the scope of water from the leaf surface and into the atmosphere. So lower the water potential, higher the resistance, because if the water potential is less, because it is moving from higher to the lower. When the higher potential water potential is lower, higher the resistance will be there. So there is a lot of, you can say, pressure from somebody else. So the rooting zone of the plant in the soil, the plant and lower layer of the atmosphere behaves as a continuum in relation to the water movement of water transfer, and is known as a soil plant atmosphere. That is a SPAC, because whenever it is in the soil, through the plant and it reaches to the atmosphere, because through the respiration or through the transpiration, that water is going out again into the atmosphere, and which is again stored into the atmosphere and condensation, and then again the rainfall occurs. So this is the continuous, you can see, the process over there. So in SPAC, water moves from the higher potential to the lower potential. Water potential of the soil near field capacity is 0.1 to 0.3 atmosphere, and nearly the P permanent building point is 15 atmosphere. The normal growing plant shows the water potential of 4 to 15 atmosphere for the normal growth. So that's why this is very important, at what atmosphere or at what bar the pressure is coming into the soil. The wastewater potential in humid weather is 100 to 15 atmosphere, and in dry weather it is 1000 atmosphere. So water essential potential in soil, plant and atmosphere are 0.8 atmosphere and 1000 atmosphere respectively. That is because of the soil, plant and atmosphere are having the different potentials, and these are the different potentials. Due to step gradient in water potential, also from the soil and atmosphere, water moves from the soil into the atmosphere. So because of the, you can see, the high requirement of the plants, or maybe the because of the climatic condition in summer season, we get the more respiration, transpiration. That's why irrigation for frequently is very required. The same case is not happening even in the Rabi season, because they have the less temperatures over there. Then all the air is moving very cold, and that's why it doesn't respire or doesn't get any heat from that one, and that's why it will be not operated over there. Soil moisture, plant uptake, that is the different water of the soils in the atmosphere system. Soil moisture, plant uptake, and translocation and evapotranspiration. That is translocation and evapotranspiration is that either it has been utilized or maybe used for some other purposes also there. So soil moisture is the different.
Hello, sir.
Huh, sir.
Hello, sir. Sorry to interrupt you. Please explain. Just slide slowly, sir. Please.
Okay.
It's too fast.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I thought it is a basic one because I have the more than 80 slides over there. I have to rush it. Okay. Water in the soil, plant, atmosphere. See that this is what they call a SPAC continuum. So soil moisture having the different part. That is, infiltration is there through the rainfall or maybe irrigation. Then again it has been redistributed into the soil conditions over there. Then withdrawal from the soil moisture is there. This is what you can say soil moisture. Withdrawal means that is uptaken by the plants or maybe the roots or maybe the leaves over there. This is what, because the soil moisture is available. Whereas in case the plant, when it is uptaken, there are three types of the absorptions there. There is a passive absorption, active absorption, and the aerial absorption. We can see that how this passively the soil is water is absorbed from the soil into the plant and into the plant to the atmosphere again. Then again the active absorption is also there. So how it has been absorbed directly due to some various pressures. So we'll see in the next slides how it has been there, passive and active absorption and aerial absorption. When the plant want to absorb the water, for example, in case of the winter season, the high, because the humidity into the moisture is there, the humidity or dew drops which is fallen on the leaves, and because of that, all the crop in the Rabi season, for example, the gram is growing on this aerial absorption itself. So plant is uptaking not from the soil as well as from the humidity, also from the aerial absorption is there. So based on that one, the plant is getting the water. Then the third one is a translocation from the roots to the plant or maybe up to air. That is how it has been translocated from cell to cell or from, because the part to part, and utilized by the physiological systems of the plant. And lastly, the evapotranspiration, because the water is being transpired from the leaf surface with the evapotranspiration process, and that pressure is created on the leaf surface, is going down to the roots, and it has been useful for uptaking of that soil, with the moisture from the soil also. This is what the, you can say, the different process over there. So plant water status is there. Water status, this one is water status of the plant tissue is described by two basic parameters: the amount continued contained relative to what is can be hold when fully turgid, and the energy status of the contained water expressed as the total water potential. When the plant is fully turgid, and if you want to absorb some of the water from there also, then how much potential it is required, how much pressure it is creating into the roots. So in that condition, it's called as a and total power, that is from the roots to the leaf surfaces, how much different pressures has been created into the plant cell. This is called as completely the total water potential. Then relative water content, which is the ratio of actual water content to the water content at saturation, is generally expressed as percentage. So that is what how much water is actually content in the soil, or maybe the actual water content, maybe when the completely the soil is being saturated through the irrigation or through the rainfall. This is generally relative water content is expressed in the percentage. So actual water content is observed by the subtracting the dry weight of the sample from the fresh weight. That is what we call the actual water content. That's why we are, in case the plant, we take the plant samples and we can dry it into the oven, and after that we are taking the weights. Based on that one, we can get the how much moisture it contains. So how much moisture loss will be there. So this much amount of the water has been absorbed by the plant at particular stages, and then we can go for a relative growth rate. How much amount has been, you can say, the photosynthesis has been developed or created by the particular plant at a particular stage. So this is what the relative growth rate, actual growth rate, or maybe the different growth rates of the your measurements. The water content at saturation is the difference between the saturation weight and the dry weight. The plant water status is estimated by measuring the leaf temperature generally. Canopy temperature, canopy air temperature differentials, and diffusive resistance and transpiration rates. When the plant water we have to estimate, then generally what we do, either we can go for the drying of the sample and we can calculate the water. But at the, you can say the standing condition, if you want to see that one, we have to measure the leaf temperature, because the temperature of the leaf is more than the air temperature. Naturally, the water is having the under the plant system, plant is under the stress condition, because the temperature of the outside is more than the temperature of the leaf. So generally we call it as a plant is as a stress. So plant needs the water. So which can measure by the just only by leaf temperature, maybe through IRGA or maybe canopy temperature we have to calculate, because that difference is because now the new instruments are there that is called as a near infrared thermometers, which can directly calculate the temperature of the leaf as well as the canopy air temperature and outside the air temperature, and the difference between that one, that is called a CATD, canopy air temperature difference is there. And based on that one, we can say that if the air temperature is, you can say, the less than the leaf temperature, naturally the plant is having the turgid condition, or it is having the water content in the plant is enough or sufficient, it is not under the stress. So you don't go for the irrigation. So likewise, if it is the air temperature is, you can say, the less and the plant temperature is more, that means plant is under the higher temperature, then naturally to cool down, we need to irrigate the plants at particular stage. So this is what we can use it for. That's why the infrared thermometers are used for measuring the leaf temperature. Parameters are used to measure the leaf temperature in addition to the transpiration and stomata resistance measurement. These are the different instruments we are using it for calculating the different water stages at level. So this is what it has the movement. I'll just only explain that how this water is moving from the soil, from the root to the atmosphere. Soil epidermal cells of the roots are there, as we have seen earlier. That is from that it moves through the, you can say, the different cells and the intracellular levels from plant one cell to another cell, and the water is moves by making turgid the each and every cell, and it is moves into the upper parts through the cells of the xylem. It goes into the leaf cells, because leaf requires that whenever the photosynthesis occurs, it requires the water, it requires the carbon dioxide, and it requires the light intensity. So when it comes together, it starts the photosynthesis. That's why it reaches from the roots to intercellular to xylem to the leaf cell. And after reaching to the leaf cell, when they are functioning of their photosynthesis and requirement for their total physiological, I can say the atmosphere, there is a biological, because the activity, after that, the water which has been remained over there into the leaf cell, that is being used as an intracellular into the leaf, and from leaf stomata, it moves into the air again as a part of the respiration. Because whenever the respiration is there, when the carbon dioxide is absorbed by these stomata, the particular amount of the moisture has been lost into the soil as a respiration. So that's why we call it as when one, it has a molecule of the carbon dioxide is going inside to the plant system for photosynthesis, the 100 molecules of the water is been going outside for in the atmosphere. So this is 1:100 type of the, you can say the relation is there. So based on these physiological approaches and to use that particular quantity of the water, we have developed the different, you can say the processes, you can say the technologies for water management. For example, that is, I'll let you know, only the partial root zone drying technology is one of the technologies that we are applying the irrigation to the crop in such a way that the plants, half part of the roots will be get irrigated, whereas the other half parts of the roots will be get under the stress condition. As the stress condition is there, plant gives the signal to the leaves that to not to respire anything, not to or to reduce the respiration. But at the same time, the irrigation from the other side is giving somewhat supplying some of the water to the plant cell to complete its physiological activity. So both the things are happening. So stomata will get loose in the down, and as soon as the molecule is being absorbed from the carbon dioxide, maybe from the stomata, only 50% of the moisture has been lost. So with this technology, partial root zone drying technology, that is PRD is called as, with this technology, we are managing this water, that is loss of water, and we can utilize that all stress conditions, because at the time of stress, plant can enhance their some of the, you can say the chemicals, allelochemicals, or maybe they can say some oligosaccharides, or maybe anything stress chemicals or stress regulated chemicals are there, which is very useful for quality enhancement. I'm putting what an example for you. In case of the tomato, when they are grown on this partial root zone drying technology, what happens? And it is doing in commercial way on somewhere. For example, for the industries, tomato processing industries, they want that the tomato should be having the less water content, a higher, you can say the biomass will be there, higher, you can say the pulp will be there. So that is also the requirement of the industry. At the same time, they says that we want the tomatoes having higher lycopene content, so that we don't want to add anything into the tomato sauce or maybe tomato ketchup or tomato any puree over there. So the researcher, the scientist has thought on this technology, and the same physiological principles has been applied for that one. This is the, because the part of the, because the very good research over there, and it is proved from that one. When you are putting the tomato plants in the partial root zone drying technology, that is stress of the roots at half of the stress for one time and half of the stress for the other time. So we found that because of the stress, the water content, water requirement of that, you can say the crop has reduced down to a greater extent in the drip irrigation also. Because from the flood, if you give the drip irrigation, it reduces the 50%. And even from the 50%, if you go to the partial root zone drying, it reduces the 20 to 30%. So naturally, we are reducing more than 70% of the water requirement of the crop. At the same time, we don't lose anything into the yield, but the two quality has been enhanced because of the stress condition. That is the produce or the tomatoes, which has been a high final product, is having the less water content, and this less water content is useful for the more pulp for the industry, so that they require less energy to extract that water, and they will get a more pulp. At the same time, lycopene content is increasing for the 2 to 3 times more, so that they don't add any artificial color to the, you can say the product of a process called a processing product, so that they have stopped that the adding of anything, and they are saving so much of money over there. So both the things are happening. That is quality of that is pulp increases, water requirement is reduced, and as well as you get the higher lycopene content. So this is what called as the research pathway. That is what the physiologically we are managing the water into the system, and we can get the better quality of the product. The same can be applied for different, maybe into pomegranate, maybe in case of anything, you can call it as a tomatoes are there, then some potatoes are there. Likewise, different qualities we are enhancing through this one. Even in chili also it has been happening to increase the capsaicin content. So this is what the technology has been now operating in, can say, large scale, and we are using it for the increasing the yield as well as reducing the amount of the resources, that is especially the water resources. And after that stomata, the water goes into the atmosphere. Okay, do you get it? This is what the pathway for water movement from the epidermal cell of the root to the atmosphere. And based on this technology, physiological approaches, we have developed the water management strategies over there. So we want to see that what is the leaf water potential. It determines the diffusion of water movement from the soil to plant and ultimately to the atmosphere. This is the various different water potentials. So leaf water potential can be determined by finding the concentration of the sugar solution, which is at equilibrium with the leaf tissue. And based on that calculation, the movement of water from the soil to the atmosphere, it's a function of water potential gradient and resistance offered by the medium. So which type of the resistance is there where the water is moving from the root to the leaf surface? There are a lot of resistance also there, because it is not going easily. It's not a pipeline. So it is also been obstructed by so many things, maybe some insects, pest, or diseases. So many things are there, and the water is not reaches to the particular height, or maybe some physiological disorders are there. So this is what we call as a leaf water potential. It includes the characters, that is root patterns, because if there are number of you can say the micro roots are there, these are highly responsible, they are highly, you can say, the active, and this is called inactive root zone period. The matured or maybe the older roots cannot function as high as the young roots. That's why root patterns is very important. Then moisture extraction pattern, how this moisture is being extracted from the soil, at which layer, at which part, and at what time. The critical periods also there, based on that critical period, because every crop has critical requirement of the plants. For example, in case of wheat, we have the four critical stages, that is the crown root initiation, then tillering stage, then the panicle initiation, and then last with the grain filling stage. These are the critical stages we are found out from the plant characteristics, and at that time the plant should not be under the stress. And if they are under the stress, naturally the yields will be get reduced. So these what we are developed it with the plant characteristics. In case of the root characteristics, there are two types of the root system: primary and adventitious roots. The taproot system consists of ventral primary root and its branches over there. That primary root is larger, and the small roots are there amongst that they are, along the way into the soil of these roots. Then the adventitious roots are the branches almost similar to the its diameter of that, because the same located, for example, rice or jowar or bajra is there. The soil depth from the moisture is extracted by the crops. So based on that root system also, we are saying that how much deeper because of flowing you have to do, so that the roots will be get into that dip. The water should move into that dip and can extract the water, can get the nutrients from that particular area. So root characteristics depending on the how to do the tillage and to give the irrigations also there. So the soil depth from which the various crop extract the most of the water is known as hello. Hello. Most of the water is known as the effective rooting depth. So soil depth from the moisture is extracted by the various crops. If the shallow roots are there up to 60 centimeter, 90 centimeter, 120 centimeter, and 180 centimeter, these are different crops are there. You can see that. And based on that one, we are selecting the soil as well as the irrigation methods of irrigation application, and the quantity of water requirement is also changes based on this soil depth. So this is what the different factors are responsible for any type of irrigation application. Then moisture extraction pattern is shows that the relative amount of moisture is extracted from a different depth. So extraction of water is most rapid in zone of the greatest root concentration and under the favorable condition. If the moisture, you can say, the into the soil is enough available for the plants to get respiration, as well as if the temperature, like you can say that it is in the summer season, then naturally the high evaporation transpiration requirement has been met by the available moisture, or maybe available irrigation, or maybe available water, then the plant will be under very good conditions. If there is a difference between that one, evaporation demand is cannot be met by the irrigation. So naturally plants will be under the stress, and you will get the reduction in the crop growth. So in general, the plant growing in uniform soil with adequate soil moisture have similar moisture extraction patterns. And then usually the moisture extraction pattern shows that about 40% of the extracted moisture comes in the upper quarter, that is 30% of the second quarter, and 20% from the third quarter, and 10% from the fourth bottom quarter. That is from the depth of, we can say, the available soil moisture into the soil. So extraction pattern varies with the irrigation frequency also, as how much irrigation. That's why in case of the drip irrigation, we are applying only at the upper part, that is up to 30 centimeter or 45 centimeter. That's why we have to go for frequent irrigation every after second day or every after third day. But in case of the flood irrigation, we give the high amount of the water so that it goes much deeper layer, and the roots has to get extracted, and they have to apply, maybe you can say that after 5 or 6 days, or depends on the climate, because in case of the winter it requires 11 days or 10 days. In case of summer, it is after the 4 days or 5 days, and in case of the Kharif season is also same way. So likewise, depending on the season, depending on the soil, the extraction pattern is varies, and even the irrigation frequency has changed. So higher is the irrigation frequency, greater is the moisture extraction from the first, you can say, root zone. The lower frequency leading to the depending soil moisture results in more moisture extraction from the lower quarter of the root zone. So, or because that roots are absorbing the water from the depth of the soil, root deeper regions. Then you can see the moisture sensitive period, as we already seen in earlier slides. That is the crop moisture sensitive period. Rice is the panicle initiation. For sorghum is the flowering, milky and duff stage is there. Maize is for tasseling and silking. Is early grain formation is the most critical period. Then permanent is the heading or flowering. Wheat is the crown root initiation heading. Likewise, different, you can see the critical growth stages of the crop to give the irrigation. So water absorption process, as we have seen in that our one of the slides, that is how this plant is uptake the water, that is active absorption, passive absorption, aerial absorption is there. So what is active absorption? The first of all, absorption, that is the water occurs by two processes, that is active and passive. That is active is that takes place when the roots of many plants absorbs water by spending the energy. That means they have to spend some energy to absorb that water or to get that water from the soil. That is called directly active absorption. But in case of passive absorption is that it takes place when the water is drawn into the roots by negative pressure in the conductive tissues created by transpiration. Generally, when the leaf is been transpired, the water, that pressure or turgor pressure is created on different cells and ultimately is goes on to the roots downward. And from that pressure, because the pressure potential is increasing, so they are absorbing the water from the roots. Roots are absorb the water from the soil, and soil, that water is translocated from one cell to another cell, and again it goes into the leaf surface. This is called the passive absorption. So similarly, in case of this one, mostly the passive absorption occur. Under normal conditions or contributions of the active absorption to the water supply to plants is very negligible, because generally there is no transpiration, there won't be absorption of water. Very negligible. It is usually less than 10% of the total absorption is there. But certain plants are surviving in soils at permanent wilting point are able to absorb the moisture from atmosphere. That is this is known as the aerial absorption or the negative transpiration. Generally, the xerophytes, we can say that even they are absorbing the water of the, you can say the hydrological, you can say the pressure is there, so that they can absorb the water, which is highly, you can say the low, you can say absorbed by the soil particles, and which is difficult to extract, and can be possible with the xerophytes only. And even with the moisture from the air also, they are completing their life cycle. So this is called as a negative transpiration. Instead of anything, without any transpiration also, the water is being absorbed from the stomata into the leaf system. Then water availability and nutrient uptake is that then the root surfaces are very much useful for the absorption of immobile nutrients. Favorable soil moisture conditions help in absorption of these type of the nutrients. So when soil moisture is less, mobility of water and nutrients are reduced. That's why we always call as there should not be any stress into the water. So we have to maintain our soils in such, you can say the field capacity conditions, so that the plant and water content in the soil will be same as we have seen in our earlier slides. That is the a total of the soil volume is that 50% is the air and the water is then 50% is the solid part. So liquid, gaseous, and so this ratio we have to maintain all the way, so that the moisture. So factors affecting this absorption is that first is the available soil water. The rate of absorption of water is decreased under availability of available soil moisture, because if you don't have the soil irrigation with you, then actually the available soil moisture will be less, and it is affecting the available soil water. So excess soil water interferes the root growth and water absorption. In case of something you can say irrigation, if it's excess water is there, for example, in case of the Kharif season in Konkan region, the huge water is there, 5,000 millimeter. But that rice crop doesn't require this much of water. So under this is the excess water is there, which is going above the saturation. It is not been utilized by the plant. So there won't be any water absorption. So that's why it is the available soil moisture is much above. So it is not being utilized by the roots. So soil water content above field capacity affects the aeration, because all the pores of the air are filled with the water. Again, that's why there won't be any aeration, and the soil will be the roots will be get affected due to suffocation, or they may be get wilted or dried out due to less availability of moisture or excess availability of moisture. So there won't be any air spaces over there. So concentration of soil solution, high concentration of soil solution due to presence of the salts inhibits the absorption of water. In case of saline and alkaline condition of the soil, the water absorption is less, or maybe the crop growth is been, you can say, they're not been inhibited. It is inhibited just because of that salinity or alkalinity. That is a salt. Soil aeration, accumulation of carbon dioxide is also detrimental to the water absorption, as it increases the viscosity of the protoplasm and decreases its permeability. As you know that if the soil is stagnated, you can say the ponding water is there, generally the crops cannot survive to it because the carbon dioxide condition has increased. The oxygen is not there into the soil. So that's why the CO2 is increased and it is directly affecting on the protoplasm activity. So under waterlogging condition, plant not able to absorb the enough water. And the temperature, lastly, the maximum absorption of the water by plant will be between 20 to 30 degrees centigrade. So increase in the temperature beyond 30 retards or the rate of the absorption, because if the plants cannot able to have the water to absorb this much of the create this much of pressure into the roots, it cannot be get absorbed. But in case of the decrease in absorption with the decrease in the soil temperature also, because if the soil temperature is reduced, naturally the transpiration rate is reduced. So that's why in case of winter, we require the less water to our crops rather than the summer crops. So both the things are there. These are factors are affecting the water absorption. So water stress and plant growth, the action of excess or deficient water on plants is known as the water stress. So mild, moderate, and severe stress are this one. These are the three different stages are there. In mild stresses, when the 8 to 10% is compared to the value in well water plant under conditions is mild evaporative demand of the atmosphere, because with this mild stress, even that the plants can survive. For example, in case of the sorghum or bajra or like these crops, they can survive under the heavy stress. But the crops like the pulses crop can at least able to survive with a small or maybe with a one or two or three irrigation, one or two irrigation, they can go better. So mild stress can be moderate absorbed by that particular plant. But in case of moderate stresses, the relative water content by 10 to 20% is compared to the value in a well watered plant under the condition of low evaporative demand of the atmosphere. That is called as a moderate stress. And in severe stresses, it is more than 20% of compared to the value in the well watered plant under the condition. That is, if it is more than that, 20% water is less as the required for the evaporative demand. So it is called as the severe stresses. So water deficit affects the all aspect of plant growth. That is because if there is no water, there is no photosynthesis properly, there is no respiration, there is no metabolic reaction, there won't be any photosynthesis will be considered produced, and they cannot be translocated also, because plant the synthesis from the leaf after synthesizing has to reach to the, you can say, the plant productive part or the economic parts. Then only it will be useful. So that's why it is to translocate that plant photosynthesis from one place to the another place is required the movement through the water itself. So that is called as the metabolic reactions. Then hormonal relationship, because for any signaling, if the plant is under stress, that strain has been, that signal has been sent from the roots to the leaf surfaces to reduce the transpiration, has gone through the some, can say, the calcium signaling or signaling process is there. So it has been just like our nervous system, the plant has is their nervous system. So likewise, the hormonal relationship is there. The nutrition is there, because the nutrient cannot be transferred from one part to other part. So ultimately, it affects the growth and its development, and lastly, it can affect or deficient or it can reduces the yield of the crop. This is all we can happen because of soil, water, plant, and relationships. Pack relationship is there. So these are the different kind of parameters or the factors which are highly responsible for, you can see, the plant growth. So these all parts are there, which is very important. But at the same time, we can see that this, because the topic is little bit related to the same, because that ultimately goes for the sustainability in agriculture. So sustainable agriculture, everybody knows that by definition is the balanced management system of renewable resources. Renewables which can be used it for again and again, including the soil, wildlife, forest, crop, fish, livestock, plant genetic resources, and ecosystem, including the degradation, and provide the food, livelihood for current and future generations, maintaining or improving the productivity. Maintaining is very important, and the second is the improving the productivity and ecosystem services of these resources. So this is very important. Sustainability is not merely that what we are getting today to get tomorrow, but it should not degrade anything. It should maintain and also improving the productivity and the ecosystem services of these all the resources which we are utilizing. The sustainable agriculture system has to be economically viable, both in case of the short and long-term perspective. So sustainable agriculture has to prevent the long hand land degradation and soil erosion, because soil erosion is largely affecting to all your soil moisture availability, SPAC, and all these things. Because if the soil is not there, generally no pores, no water holding capacity, no transpiration, no nothing is there. So no growth, nothing will happen to there. No can be live on this system. So sustainable agriculture is also known as the eco farming, or not only organic farming or natural farming or permaculture like this one. So advantages are, everybody knows that it can maintain the ecological balance, low cost of cultivation, because you are adding some of the nutrients which is available into the nature, some of the kinds of practices which is available into your ecosystem, or the resources which is available to you. It's not that you are not adding anything which is high costly or to requires the inputs for that one. So it is low cost of cultivation, then clean environment and nutritious food without pesticide residue. As you know that we are not adding any chemicals over there largely, but as per the need or maybe as per the requirement, and not the excess one. So there won't be any pollution, there won't be any kinds of pesticide residue. But disadvantage is that at the earlier beginning, because you have to depend large depending on the natural resources, that's right. Yeah, yields may be lower, conservation process is very long, because the after long of 50 or 60 years of our, can say, the continuous use of chemical farming, or we can say modernized farming, we are now converting to the conservation process. It takes some time to maintain its soil organic carbon, to maintain its soil health, and to maintain the all its soil moisture, or maybe structure and texture, everything. So lack of timely and effective control of the weeds or insect and disease, and thus there is insufficient and unreliable research data on recommended this certificate. Now the data is available now. Now everybody can know that how we can do this. So management practice are various. This one: tillage, weed, crop protection, watershed pest, nutrient, and conservation of genetic resources, and efficient water management. All these practices we have to follow, and we have to go for sustainability with the various steps. That is, conserve and create the healthy soil, conserve the water and protect its quality, managing the organic wastes and farm chemicals so they do not pollute the organic waste. So manage the pest with minimal environmental impact, select the plants and animals adapted to the environment, because if you can go for cultivation of, you can say that what you call as a Shamrook is there. Shamrook, I forgot the name of that one. That largely which has been popularized previously, because that can be used as good meat for low calorific value are there. So these type of the cropping, or maybe the animals which you are introducing into our system, which is not native of this area, are largely affecting the environment. So now this has not been adapted. So that's why, so manage the pest, select the plants and animals adapted to the environment. Encourage the biodiversity, conserve the energy resources, and increase the profitability and reduce the risk, because you are you knowing that if you are not hiding anything, largely it cannot going to be uh, reduce any type of the your losses over there. So this is all we can say, that because this is the another topics. I don't want to share or maybe discuss that one. This is not